Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here. My name is Layla, and today I'm so happy to share with you my mid-year book check tag. So basically the idea is to show you guys how many books I have read in 6 months. As you probably know if you watched my earlier videos, I set a goal of reading 30 books this year because last year I read 26 books, and in 6 months of 2024, so far I have read 22 books. I am 4 books away from my last year's total number of books, and it's only 6 months in. You know, like, we're 6 months in this year. That's actually a lot, but at the same time it's half of this year, you know, and I'm 22 books in. Like, I am proud of myself, I'm not gonna lie. I think this is, no, I don't think, I know for a fact this is the most books I have ever read in 6 months. So I'm very proud of myself, and I am happy to present to you all the books that I read this year and to share with you my ratings and thoughts. I'll try to be as quick as possible because 22 books, that's a lot to go through. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so first book I read this year is I Sat Alone by the Gate by Mary Effendi. I don't have a physical copy because I read it on my phone in my books app. So let me just tell you, I interviewed the author for my podcast earlier this year, so you can go and watch it. I enjoyed this book a lot because it's based on the life of the author, Mary, but there is some fiction added to it as well, and it is her debut novel, and she's Azerbaijani as me, and I feel like that is a big part of why I love this book, because I am happy to see fellow Azerbaijanis representing our culture and doing amazing things. So I of course gave it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. By the way, self-promo, I have a Goodreads account. I share everything there related to books, so if you want to know what I'm reading and just to be friends there, then I'll leave the link in the description box and you can go ahead and befriend me there. Next book is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This is the first book out of 4, I think, and I've been wanting to read it for a few years now, so it was definitely an interesting read, and I do want to read its second book. And no, I haven't yet. I don't know how. It's just like, you know, I read it in January and then I was like, yeah, I will eventually, I will, and then I just keep forgetting to buy its second book. It's definitely the type of book that is kind of easygoing, even though it is like mystery, murder, crime type of story, but it is so funny because it's 4 friends at the retirement house solving murders, and it was very easygoing and it was very enjoyable. At first I gave it 5 out of 5, but then as my reading progressed this year, I was like, okay, maybe it's not fair to other books to give this one 5 out of 5 because it's definitely not like the most incredible writing and plot, you know, all of that. So later I went and changed it to 4 stars instead, but it's still a good book, and I definitely want to read other books in the series. Prisoners of Geography by Tim Marshall. This book I have seen in the local bookstore trending, so I was quite curious what it is about, and I think this was one of those reading by my mood type of reads. When I started reading it, I was really into political writing, like I just wanted to read something political, so I think that's why it really hit the spot. However, I recommended it to my husband and he couldn't even finish it. It was so not enjoyable for him because the whole explanation of why different countries are beefing with one another and why some countries start wars based on political geography, you know. It's not for everyone, but I definitely learned a lot. I didn't know a lot about, like I say, countries beefing between each other. Like, there are some countries that you don't even know that they don't like each other, like India and China have some, you know, they're not like openly hating each other, but there is definitely something going on over the Tibet, you know. And then obviously Pakistan and India, I kind of knew that one, but Kashmir being explained better here. So I definitely love this book. I gave it 5 out of 5, but I do think you will enjoy it if you are into political reading. Otherwise, you probably will think the same way as my husband did, that it's a stupid explanation of why we have wars and conflicts in the world. Next is The Stranger by Albert Camus. I gave it 5 stars. It was my second Camus. I enjoyed it much more than The Plague. I really enjoyed it being so philosophical and making you think about life, and Camus being regarded as one of the most important and celebrated writers of the 20th centuries. Definitely was much more appreciated by me in this short novel rather than The Plague. The Plague made me feel very uncomfortable, but The Stranger really hit the spot. I don't know why I enjoyed it. I'm not really well versed in philosophy, but I just liked it. So there's that. Next is Mikhail Bulgakov and his A Dog's Heart. I read it in Russian because I know Russian. I love Mikhail Bulgakov and his Master and Margarita, my favorite book of all times. I definitely need to reread it and revise it now that I'm 10 years older than I was when I first read it, you know. But A Dog's Heart is always like being talked about, at least like in the Russian speaking part of the world. Like you just hear about A Dog's Heart. There's like this old Soviet movie even. So it is one of those novels, short novels, stories, I don't know, is it a novel or story, that people talk about, and it's definitely regarded as a classic of Russian literature. But I gave it only 4 stars because I just really didn't like this whole villainization of the proletariat, which I found offensive, because I think one good thing about Soviet Union was that simple people, like those that we see being portrayed as these low brow culture type of people, like they got an opportunity to get education, to get equal rights, while before they would just be slaves of high society, you know, especially in Russia. So this spin on making a dog into a human, and yet the dog remains to be a dog even as a human, like I didn't really enjoy that part. I find Bulgakov very funny, like his writing is amazing, it's hilarious, but just I think as someone who comes from a working class family, I cannot relate to that. It was kind of offensive, but it's also like it was so long ago when he wrote that. Also, he was part of intelligentsia or even like high class, you know, so I get what he was going through, but as someone in the post-Soviet society, proletariat family, I don't agree with that at all. Next is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, and this is my first Morrison, and I honestly wanted to read her books for such a long time because she is loved, she is celebrated, she is a legend. And I actually didn't know about her until she died. So when the news came out that Toni Morrison passed away, that was actually the first time I researched who was this author. And it is sad that I didn't know her during her lifetime and I didn't read her books while she was still alive. I gave this book 4 stars. I do think that her writing is amazing. She's an amazing writer, but this book was just too painful for me. It's not something I can recommend to everyone to read. I would definitely say read trigger warnings before reading it because I had no idea. And you hear about the story that basically there is this black girl in the novel that wants to have blue eyes, and how Eurocentric beauty standards are regarded, surprise surprise, as the best beauty standards. Like this is all we want to be, and that's what you see in the movies, in the magazines. Of course it is much better now in the 21st century. We definitely see diversity, we see beautiful women of different skin tones and complexions, and it's beautiful and I love that. But of course this book I think takes place in the 70s, or 60s even. So you can imagine back then Black people just got freedom and are still like fighting for equal treatment, and you can imagine how it must have been for young Black girls who would go to the movies and only see, you know, blue-eyed, blonde-haired Hollywood actresses. So in that way, this book was amazing. And I think for me, like childhood cruelty, like all that is related to that, it's like it was too painful to read. So for that reason, I give it 4 stars. But it did make me feel deep feelings, which means it's a brilliant writing that made me feel all those painful feelings, you know. But I definitely want to read more from her. I heard that people love Beloved, and it's like a trilogy, so like all 3 books in the trilogy are always being talked about, so I definitely want to go there next. But I would recommend it, but I would just prepare yourself for the pain. Next book is Tales from the Cafe. This is second part in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. I believe there are 4 in total, and I gave it 3 stars. However, I love Toshikazu Kawaguchi, how he is able to write these like beautiful novels in a very simple way that I think children from age 10, 12 can read this book, and like adults up to 50 can read this book and like feel things equally. You don't need to be prepared for any sort of pain. However, some moments are really I wouldn't say painful, but very sensitive. And as the book is about people going back to the past to meet most of the times people who have passed away, and to meet them when they were still alive, you can imagine like there's a lot of sentimental parts. I would recommend reading this book, or to start with the first one, whenever you're feeling stuck reading wise and you want to get out of your reading slump. I think this book will do it and will get you to the other side, because it's very easy to read. It takes you a few days to finish. Maybe if you're a fast reader and you will just take the whole day, just 1 day is enough. I really enjoyed it. 3 stars because, you know, like I said, when you compare it like to Toni Morrison or like Bulgakov, and I gave them 4 stars, and then it's not fair to give this book 4 stars. And so I'm kind of trying to be mindful of other books, but it's still a brilliant and beautiful book, and I definitely enjoyed it. The autobiography of Malcolm X, I lost count of how many books we're talking about, so I'll just keep on going. This one is hands down my absolute favorite of this year. I don't think there will be a book that will top this one. This book took me a few months actually to finish. It's quite thick, but I highlighted a lot there, like a lot of parts are highlighted, and I really enjoyed it because I love Malcolm X. I watched a lot of documentaries after I was done with this book. I watched a movie with, was it Denzel Washington who played him, before reading this book. So I'm a fan of Malcolm X. Like, I genuinely adore him, and I am still sad about him passing away so early. And I feel like when I was reading this book especially, I was just like thinking about the state of world affairs today and about the struggle for freedom of Palestinians, and I wondered how would Malcolm X react to the current events and affairs. So as I was reading this book, I felt like I wish I met him in real life. I wish I got a chance to talk to him. And you know, when you are reading someone's autobiography or someone's book and you think that way, that's like love right there. And especially I loved his description of Islam, especially once he left the Nation of Islam, which, you know, it's like American take on Islam. I don't know, it's just, I find it weird, but thankfully he left that and he just followed the traditional Sunni Islam, and he got to go to Mecca. So it's just like, as a Muslim person, reading all of that and reading about your religion in a more positive way than like you see it on the Western media or like literature, it was really beautiful and empowering, and I will recommend this book to everyone. I'm not gonna take more time talking about it because we still have a lot of books, but yes, this one, my absolute favorite of this year. Next is Will Storr and his The Science of Storytelling. I really had high hopes for this one. It didn't actually turn out as I thought it would. I thought it would include more tips on how to write. I did learn stuff about crafting a story and like how there are different types of plots that you can develop, like depending on which school I guess you're following, if it's like Western, if it's more Asian. But overall, there were just a lot of examples of how other writers have done it, and I didn't really enjoy it that much. So I felt like the whole book could have been much shorter if he would just give us a scoop of like rules, but instead it's a lot of like examples, which I guess some people enjoy, but I just really wanted it to be more theoretical, so 3 out of 5. Next is Sayaka Murata and her Earthlings. This is my second Murata book, and I did not expect it to go this way. I think that the convenience store woman is so like powerful and feministic, and so fun to read. And I heard that people are saying like this one is so weird, and that's all they're saying, you know. And I was like, what is so weird about it? Because like, you know, the cover of it looks so cute, you think it's something cute, you know. No, it's not cute at all. It was like the whole time I was reading it, and I read it in one day, and that's a good sign, because it's like I was so into it that I just needed to know how it will end. And I am a slow reader, so for me to finish a book in one day, it has to be good. So it was good in terms of like keeping you on your toes, because it's so bizarre. Like the events that are happening, you're just reading and you're like, what? You know, it is funny. Like, who said it was funny? Okay, Elif Batuman, she said that it was radical, hilarious, heartbreaking. You know, and then like I kept on seeing people saying it's so funny, and I'm like, what do you mean? But then like as more time passed, I'm like, it was actually funny. Like, who comes up with that stuff? That was funny, but it was so bizarre. I will never recommend it to anyone, because I don't want anyone to think I'm crazy. But yet, you know, you need to have some guts to write and craft a story like this one, where everything is absurd and there's a lot of weird stuff happening. But I see what she was trying to do with this novel. She was trying to see how far you can go without being labeled weird, just like her character, right? And I don't remember how much I gave this book, so let me quickly see. 2 stars. 2 stars. Yes, it was fun and all, but it was just like, what the hell did I just read? But there you go, +1 book into my 2024 reading challenge. Next book is Jaded by Ella Lee. She's a young author, and this is her debut novel, and I was actually recommended to interview her for my podcast, and that's why I bought her book to read it before interviewing her. However, a few times I reached out and it just didn't happen. It is what it is, you know what, it's no big deal. The book, however, was very interesting. I gave it 4 stars because I don't know, it's not like, yet again, you know, 5 stars is reserved for the best of the best, at least this year. That's my take on it. It was a pretty good book. It's not like my favorite or mind-blowing, you know, but it's really good because it's a debut novel of a young author, and I just couldn't relate really to the character. But I did enjoy the part where she is talking about her multicultural background as Turkish and Korean, just like the author herself, and I found it very relatable as someone who is half Azerbaijani and half Kazakh. So yeah, a lot of those descriptions were familiar, but otherwise, like her work in a law firm and trying to cater to the white people, I didn't really vibe with that. But I still think it's a wonderful book and an important one to read for all the corporate girlies. Next is Anton Chekhov and his Uncle Vanya. So basically I bought this Russian book and it has inside 4 books, and I already talked about it in my Russian books haul. Go watch it if you haven't. So I read 2 plays out of 4, and we're gonna get to the second one a bit later, but for now, Uncle Vanya, it was my first time reading Chekhov's play from the beginning till the end. And at least, like, I don't remember, I know at school we went through him, but I don't remember reading his plays fully. So either I'm tripping and I don't remember things, or it was actually my first full play by him. And I decided to read Uncle Vanya because of this Japanese movie I watched, Let Me Drive Your Car, I think it's called. And there, basically, if you haven't watched it, watch it. I think it's great. It's kind of boring, but if you like movies that are not for the general public, you're like one of a kind type of viewer like me, you will enjoy it, because my husband didn't like it. And I loved it because I was like, this is so different, this is so unique. But basically there, the main character, he puts this play, Uncle Vanya, and it's in different languages. And that's like, you know, second storyline. The main storyline is like something else. But as he was doing that, I was like, huh, Uncle Vanya, I never even heard about it. So then I bought a book that had it and I read it, and honestly it's so short and it's regarded as a comedy. And I was like, it's actually very sad. What do you mean comedy? But that's like Russian literature for you. Everything is sad, even if it's a comedy. So I loved it. Like, I feel like Chekhov's plays, they just calm you down. There's like nothing extra traumatic going on. You just like, you sit down and you laugh through it. You feel the pain, you cry a bit. I cried, I think, in the end a bit. But then, you know, you let it go. You let it go, and it's just, it's there. I definitely recommend you to read Chekhov in at least one of his plays. We're gonna come back to this book once we are gonna come to the second play. I gave it 5 stars because honestly, to be able to put so many emotions in such a short play, you need to be a genius, and Chekhov clearly was. Next is The Fall by Albert Camus. It was actually his last book that he wrote, and I gave it 5 stars, and I absolutely loved it. Like, I think I loved it even more than The Stranger, and when I read The Stranger I thought this is like the best one, but I think The Fall is the best one. And yet again, I'm not like very into philosophy, so I do think I need to like read up on explanation. And I did listen to a podcast actually called, I think, Philosophize This or something like that. I'll try to find it and maybe link it if you want to listen through it. And it kind of gave explanation. It was really nice to see that I wasn't completely off with my non-philosophical analysis of the book, internal, like I didn't like post it anywhere or anything. So even though I'm not into philosophy, just because I'm not like educated enough on philosophy, something I would love to actually like study more. Yeah, I feel like I had to listen to actually someone who knows philosophy to explain to me if I truly got it or not. But don't ask me to explain what this book is about, because like I don't have the capacity to put it into words. You just need to read it. It's like you have to be there to understand the whole story. But I do think like if you want to read Albert Camus, I don't know if it's right to start from the last story that he ever produced, but I do think The Fall is like the best, and I will recommend it to everyone who will listen to me. And next is Edward Said and his Orientalism. I have been reading this book since the end of last year, and I'm so glad that I finished it. It was really hard read for me. It's like full-on academic language. As much as it was hard, it was very important, and I think it's important for everyone to read to understand how the East, Middle East, Arabs and Muslims are villainized because of the Western history with the Middle East and Islam and Arabs, and how it didn't just start after 9/11. it was always there. As long as there were Arabs, as long as the West was aware of their existence, there were these stereotypes and villainization of that part of the world and people from that part of the world. And then when Islam became a thing, that was one more thing to hate about the Arabs and Middle Easterners, and now just like Muslims in general. I was looking forward to hear, I guess, Edward Said's perspective, kind of like debating these Western perspectives, but he was just like putting it out there academically, and then just like would drop something like a hint that like this is bizarre that they think so, but then he wouldn't like follow ups. But I guess like that's like academic writing, right? You need to be very specific with your source and you don't add your opinion. But I was looking forward to read his opinion and like to debunk all of this, and I didn't get that, and that is why I only gave it 4 out of 5, because I do think, in my personal opinion, it could have been more of an attack on these Western stereotypes, which he did say in the end that that's not what he wanted to do, but I wanted him to do that, okay? But yes, please do read this book. It will change how you see the East and West interactions in general. Once I was done with Orientalism, I was so into like reading anything that wasn't as hard to read anymore. So I got myself Miyako Kawakami and her All the Lovers in the Night, and this is my last Kawakami. After this one, I have nothing else waiting for me to read from her. And if you don't know, I absolutely love her. I fell in love with her last year. I read 2 of her books, Breasts and Eggs and then Heaven, and this one is the last one, and I loved it so much because I love Kawakami, and I think she is one of the like few writers of this century that I genuinely love and I look forward to reading more from. I don't know who else, I cannot think of anyone else right now, but I'm sure there is someone, but I just know that she is on top. Okay, like she is the author that is alive, that I'm waiting to produce more stories, novels, everything. There are short stories from her that I can still read, that are still unread by me, but I mean like novels wise, this one was the last remaining, and I gave it 5, obviously. Did I say that already? Basically, it's about a freelance proofreader in her 30s. She has never been in any relationships, and I really enjoy like following her like single life. It just like, there's something about Kawakami's like writing that makes me feel like I'm part of it, like I'm there, you know, like I'm friends with her characters. I don't know, it's just like so cozy. Like her books make me feel cozy. And there were some like notes of feminism, but not as much as in Breasts and Eggs. And yet another thing, all 3 novels by her follow different stories. They don't repeat one another. They're so different and unique that you're like, oh, you're really good. Like you go this way, you go that way, and you go this way and that way, and then you just produce different story each time. Like, I love her. She can do no wrong in my eyes, okay? I love her. And then my another favorite author, Joan Didion, and her Blue Nights. I believe this is my 4th Joan Didion. This was one of her last, I think, works. Basically, it was written after the Year of Magical Thinking, which was about the death of her husband and how she was like living through that grief. And this one is about her losing her daughter a few years after her husband passed away, and like it is as painful as it sounds, right? Like I don't know how she survived both of those tragedies and she continued living and working. And this book I would not recommend to people who have never read Joan Didion. Like it's definitely for those who love her writing, who were already kind of like invested in her life. And I watched a documentary on Netflix about her life, you know, so I kind of already knew the events that would be kind of talked about here. By the way, the documentary is really great, and it was produced when she was still alive. Yet again, just like with Toni Morrison, like I wish I read her books while she was still alive, because like the fact that there were these authors that were alive in the same like time frame that I was alive. There was this time frame when we were all on this earth at the same time, and I didn't read them until they passed away. It kind of makes me sad. I don't know if you get this feeling, but it's like, you know, I like Dostoevsky, but I know I never had a chance, you know, to live in the same time with him. And there's something about sharing the same time frame with writers that were as amazing, at least for me, as Joan Didion and Toni Morrison and I don't know who else. But these are the two that come to my mind and make me kind of sad that I didn't discover them sooner. But this book is not something you want to read during the summertime, because you are going to be crying, and it's just sad. It's just a sad book. Maybe leave it for fall. It's really beautiful, and I think Joan Didion, just like Miyako Kawakami, like I will read anything from these women just because I love them so much. And Joan Didion is an absolute inspiration of mine, to be able to write nonfiction the way she was writing it, to be a journalist that can produce a story in such a literary way. Like, that's the goal. So 5 out of 5. Next book is Tender is the Flesh, and I read it, I think, beginning of June, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, it was like end of May, but it was so hot, and I think this is the worst book to read when it's hot, because the way the author talks about human meat, human flesh being eaten, because in this dystopian novel we are in the future where eating meat, like animals meat, is not allowed anymore because it's contaminated. So people decided, instead of becoming vegetarians, to start eating people, and there are special people that are not even being called people that are being eaten, that are being bred to be eaten, and they're being treated exactly like animals in the slaughterhouses all around the world. Made me feel even prouder that I stopped eating meat 15, how many years ago? 15 years ago. But as a vegetarian, reading description of like the flesh, human flesh and all of that, made me feel so nauseous. Like I wanted to vomit a few times when I was reading it, and it was so hot outside that it was like so much worse reading it. So I think read this book during Halloween season. I think it's a perfect book for that season. Definitely don't read it in the summer or spring, because it's just not the vibe. I gave it 3 stars just because I really didn't like how it ended. I didn't enjoy reading it just because of all the gruesome description and gory details. It just wasn't something I would want to reread. I think it is an interesting idea, and for that I gave it 3 stars, but I don't know, maybe I kind of expected more. Maybe I wanted like more action, but it's just like we are following the character whose life kind of reveals all these like awful details about meat production in the future, dystopian future, and I didn't want it to end the way it did. No. Next book is Chakra Healing. I bought this book together with a few other books related to health and well-being after my ear infection incident. If you haven't watched that video, go watch it, because like it's a lot. It was a very traumatic experience. I don't want to talk about it, but learning about chakras really was therapeutic for me, and now I just want to like focus on chakra healing more, not related to that story, but like as in like just, you know, having that lifestyle practice of like using essential oils. I don't think I'm that much into like all these different crystals, but this book gives you basically a very basic explanation of chakra healing, what are chakras, what each chakra represents, like what each pain in your body could be related to in terms of your chakras, what oils to use for certain chakras, crystals for certain chakras, and yoga positions as well. So I think it's just a very easy and light book for you to kind of like enlighten yourself about chakras. I think I gave it, no, I don't remember. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars just because I feel like I saw some people on Goodreads saying that it felt like copy-pasted information from the internet. Maybe, but like I just needed to be spoon-fed this information because I wouldn't just spend time researching and doing it all myself. So I think it's a great book if you're interested in this topic. If you're not into all these things, if you don't believe in them, obviously it's not for you. Don't read it, you know. But if you are interested, if you are into yoga and essential oils and crystals and chakras, but maybe you don't know as much, right? Then read this book. If you know enough, you probably will be bored with this and like you should go somewhere higher to learn more. But this one was a great stepping stone to dive into the world of chakras. Next book, I have not given any score, obviously, and I'm not going to, and I'm not gonna even discuss it, but it was one of the books I read this year, and that was Quran. As a Muslim, non-practicing Muslim, I was always curious to learn more, so that was my attempt to kind of like learn and understand. And one thing I realized, I'm like really interested now in learning about other religions, and like I think it's wonderful that people believe in different things, and I would definitely want to learn about other religions as well. So we're not going to make it a big deal, and I'm definitely not going to be giving ratings to religious texts because I think it's sacred to each community that take it seriously, you know, for obvious reasons. But yeah, I read Quran this year. Next book is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, and I read this book after seeing it for many years all over social media, and I wanted to read it like back in 2020, I think, or when was it released, like 2019. However, I gave it only 3 stars because I just feel like at 29 reading this book was just not for me. I think it's for younger girls. I think like if you're in your early 20s, it's a perfect book for you. I just couldn't relate to this character, and I already talked about it in my summer book recommendations video. I recommend it to people to read when they don't want to think too much, but I also think if you're probably in your 30s, it's not gonna be much of a help for you. I think it's definitely more for younger girls. So I really wanted to enjoy this book, but it was kind of meh. And then yet again, Chekhov and his The Cherry Orchard. In my high school, we went to watch the play, and funny enough, I don't remember anything. When I was reading the play, I was like, I don't remember this happening at all. Like, I don't know how I was watching it. I just do remember that they were about to sell the cherry orchard, and that I think they did sell it. And then when I was reading it, and I kind of spoiled it, didn't I? Oops. Yeah, so then I was reading and I was like, oh, okay, this I remember. Yeah, yet again, I gave it only 4 stars because for some reason I feel like Uncle Vanya was much more emotional for me. This one I was kind of like, okay, this is like Uncle Vanya. There's like some similarities going on, but it is also different. So I just like, I didn't like it as much. I don't know why. I do think maybe because it was second play that I read from him, like the first one being like the first, you know, you kind of like enjoy it more because you're like, oh wow, you can do this, like this is interesting. And then the second one, it's kind of like, kind of sounds familiar. So I think that's why I gave it 4 stars. I do think that still his plays are wonderful. Everything I said about them is true. Until the end of the year, I still want to read the 2 remaining plays in this book, and that is Three Sisters and The Seagull. So I will update you at the end of 2024 if all goes well. And now the final book of this video is this one, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. I gave it 5 stars, and I can already tell you this is on the top of the list of the best books I read this year. Like, I started reading it thinking it's just like some, you know, self-help type of vibe. I didn't expect much from it, and I thought it's just gonna be promoting like therapy, going to therapy, but no, it was just so interesting. It talked about different patients that Lori Gottlieb, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, I'm really sorry, how Lori sees these different patients. Each one has different story. One patient, of course, absolutely will break everyone's hearts. I'm not gonna say more because just let it be like a surprise, you know. I cried, like there were 5 chapters altogether that made me cry, and it was about different characters. It's not characters, it's patients. It's actually based on true people whose identities have been concealed, so we don't know like how much is it fictionalized and how much of it is true. But yeah, all the different patients made me cry. Like there were 5 chapters that I was crying reading, and even the chapter about Lori talking to her therapist about their fathers, like even about her, not even about her patients, but even that chapter made me cry. So I'm just the type of person, if a book makes me cry, it's a good one. Like you made it. You made it here, okay? You're gonna stay here forever. You made me cry. But no, I think I would recommend this book to every person. Like I literally started recommending it already to everyone I know. I was like, you have to read this book, it's so great. Because everyone is struggling with mental health these days. Who is not, right? We're all like talking about therapy, going to therapy, thinking about going to therapy. And this book is just like really about that. And as it says here, a therapist, her therapist in our lives revealed. So you will be reading about her patients, her going to her therapist. Each chapter goes like from one patient to another, to Lori's life, to her past, to her present, to her going to therapist. So it's so interesting. And then I'm gonna reveal a secret. Lori actually, before becoming a therapist, she was a journalist. And you can definitely tell that she was a journalist because the book is written like literary nonfiction and not just like some person who decided to write a book. You know what I mean? Sometimes you read a book and you're like, yeah, like you read a book and it is by someone who like is trying to write, and it's completely different when you read a book by someone who has made it into a career, you know what I mean? So definitely recommend, 5 out of 5. And that sums up my today's video. 22 books, and we have 6 more months left. I'm excited to see how many more books I'll read this year. I made a goal of 30, so we'll see how many more I'll read. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know how many books you read this year, and if any of the books I showed you today you read, what you think about them, if you want to read them. I want to know it all. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. I love you. Bye.